Did you see RG3 is writing a book? How about this? Released a statement on social media. I'm so excited to announce that I wrote a book, and it's coming out in August 2022, titled Surviving Washington. How about that? I'm glad he's excited because I'm not. I mean, we've already heard all this. Like, what else could we possibly hear from RG3 about what's going on in Washington that we haven't already gotten stories from, whether it's from LaVar Arrington or somebody else who's talked about what a disaster that organization is through and through?
I mean, I've certainly said it for many, many years. And it's funny because when people say what they feel and what they mean or what they've experienced, they're diminished or they're downplayed. It's not really respected. It's like there's always a catch. There's always a reason why. Like, oh, he's disgruntled, so he wants to put them down and this and that. No, look at the results. Look at the results. I mean, they have not been a good organization. I'll say this. I thought the wording of the title was interesting because if you follow, media and different things like that, surviving that was based off of the documentary of R. Kelly.
Yes.
All right, so that's the first thing people are going to associate and attach.
Which, by the way, my God,
horrible, right?
Unbelievable.
What a deep hole that is. And so, to me, if he's strategically positioning what he's doing to hit and impact the way that I, in my humble estimation, I know what it was like when I was there, and if I was that type of dude. Where I would have my dad in the locker room at halftimes and stuff like that, I probably would write a tell-all book too.
Your daddy?
There's just certain things that I will never do tell-alls about. There's just certain things that I'm just not. I'll take them to the grave with me, and it just is what it is. But here's the thing: when you think about that email, those emails, and all that stuff that was coming out, that was the only thing exposed. I think he has now set the stage by saying surviving it, and he's taken it into a whole nother tone that goes beyond just the realm and the parameters of him being a football player. And I think that that's what makes this intriguing because we do see a lot I saw a lot as a player. I saw a whole lot more as the player, and I saw a whole lot more as the franchise player. And if I were to say some of the things that I've seen, some of the things I've experienced, you wouldn't believe me. You would not. If I said it or if I wrote it in a book, you would not believe that those things were said, that those things happened the way that they did. You wouldn't believe it. And so I'm interested to see what his experiences were because there was only one other player that was as big a figure coming into that organization the way that they did as a draft pick as me, and it was RG3. I was there covering. I covered that team. That's where I cut my teeth in the media game doing radio. Was during the Mike Shanahan time, and I was there when they brought RG3 in, and when they took him with that overall number 2 pick, and he revitalized and rejuvenated an entire fan base, an entire city. I mean, RG3 mania was a real thing. Like, it was real. That thing, it was to nauseam how popular and how big of a figure RG3 was. So I think it'll be interesting because at that point, you would assume that Dan Snyder and the rest of the people that were around would have understood by then to maybe do things just a tad bit differently than what you were doing and how you were doing it when I was there. But from what I could gather, it got worse, and it went beyond it went beyond the parameters of the football building. It was like at local bars and pubs and hotels and anyways, I ain't gonna go there. I'll just read his book. I can't even imagine what's in there. Or what's going to be in there from his perspective, or because that's how they handled my injuries. That's how they handled a lot of our injuries. They handled a lot of things incorrectly. But he's going to tell it. I'm interested to hear it.
Yeah.
Brady, I would love to get your opinion on this. Don't you think that if anybody did their version of a tell-all, I mean, don't you think that S would be ridiculous, like in some type of shape or form? Like, I mean, is it really kind of? Do we look at this as like? Do we take this at face value, or? Because I'm telling you, to name it that, you want Me Too movement people to buy in and to subscribe to this book that you're about to put out. Let's be clear, you're going after Me Too people. So if you think about it, Brady, couldn't anybody do a tell-all book that would be provocative enough to get people to want to pay attention to it, whether it has a ton of validity to it or not?
I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that. I think in general, when someone writes a tell-all and they're writing it from their perspective, like that's my first issue with it. I'm just not the type of guy that's like, hey, let's write a book about myself, like, or want to do that. Like, I think even when you're to a certain level, I'm not sure it's really necessary. So it's more of telling about the individual to me than everything about, because it gives you or sheds some light on what they're about. As much as it's about them telling a story or what happened or from their perspective, they're just like a me guy. Like everything's got to be about them. And he seems to be like that type of guy. Like I listen to him call games. It's the most distracting thing ever. Listening to how he calls a college football game, it's hard to listen to for me.
Because he makes it all about him.
He makes it about himself.
Yeah.
It was no. By the way, it's no different than Tony Romo. All right, for all those people out there who want to take this in a certain direction.
I see what you did there.
Well, I'm just saying I couldn't stand Tony Romo, and I think he's gotten actually better at this. But early on, he made it so much about his predictions or about himself, and I was like, I can't stand listening to this. Just let me watch the game. Let me watch what's happening right now. We've got Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady going back and forth. Like, those are the guys that I want to, like, watch and hear the sounds and everything from the game. Mm-hmm. There's too many guys to do that. So, again, not to get off on a tangent.
No, but it's relevant. It's relevant.
I just think when you're writing a book about yourself, it kind of says a lot to me.
And it's yourself, but you're surviving. You dig? Like, so you are.
The way he put that to me is, I think it takes away from what a lot of other people experienced. When you start talking about like survive, like, okay, like again, you and I have a foundation that works with the military, works with veterans.
That's surviving.
That's surviving. Like you start throwing around that word. I'm like, oh no, don't say that. Like, that's surviving. That's fighting for this country. That's surviving.
Yeah.
Don't be comparing what that is, playing a professional sport. As bad as an organization may be, trust me, I'll say this again, as bad as an organization that you get drafted into, okay, that I may have been drafted, as bad as it is, that's not surviving. All right.
Yeah.
That's a blessing. You get to play football in the NFL, and regardless of whether it's a good or bad experience, it's a blessing. That ain't surviving.
We just live in a society now where it's so victim-driven, and for the simple fact that victim mentality is so prevalent and it's running so rampant, people have become so soft and so politically correct and so many different things that have began to reshape the fabric of what America represents. And it just throws me off that you already set the stage with what you're doing by leading off with victim. You're leading off with victim, like surviving. You're leading off with victim. So basically, you're going to try. I know what his angle is going to be. He's going to try to make himself a hero and endearing to all of the women that were impacted by what happened. I know that's where this is going.
And also, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who can look back at their career and say, "Man, I wish my situation was handled differently. It would have been a different story." How
a lot of us.
But here's the thing. He's now a broadcaster. Like, at some point, don't you want to move forward and capitalize on the great opportunities you have
it's interesting
in front
to know
of you?
What does he gain by doing it?
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Strange, man.
I mean, money. You get money from the book.
Yeah. Oh, he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
They're going to pay for it. It's going to be like a manual. Watch what I tell you.